I used to think I knew him, my fiancé, Mark. We'd been together for 3 years, and I honestly believed I'd found my forever. My life was a routine of work, late nights at the office, and dreaming about the future we'd build. We talked about getting married, having kids someday, settling down. But all that shattered completely the day I found out he'd been lying to me from the beginning. It was a regular Tuesday afternoon when I decided to surprise Mark at his place after work. I was 5 months pregnant, swollen in ways I'd never experienced before, and my stomach felt like a heavy stone every time I moved. I hadn't seen him in a couple of days, and I was craving a little reassurance, just to hear his voice, see his face, know everything was still okay. When I knocked on his door, I expected him to be waiting, maybe with a smile that would melt away the fatigue I'd been carrying. But what I saw instead was a woman coming out of his bedroom. I froze. She looked surprised, caught off guard, her cheeks flushed, her eyes wide with guilt. My skin crawled as I looked from her. To him, Mark was shirtless, still in his sweatpants, standing just inside the door. His face drained of color when he saw me. The woman hurried past me, trying to hide her face, but I saw enough. The lipstick smudged on her collar, the faint scent of perfume I didn't recognize. "Who the hell is she?" I demanded, voice trembling but trying to sound firm. Mark looked like a deer caught in headlights. "It's not what you think," he blurted out, but I wasn't about to fall for that lie. The evidence was right there, her lipstick, the way her hair was still damp from rushing out of his shower. I felt my stomach turn, the sudden rush of nausea hitting me hard. "I saw her lipstick on your collar," I said, voice cracking. "And her hair is still damp. Did you even think I wouldn't find out?" He looked down, silent. She took a quick step back, clutching her purse like she was trying to disappear into the shadows. My fists clenched, the room suddenly feeling too small, suffocating. Everything was spinning, the betrayal, the pain, the sense that my whole world was crumbling. I turned to her first. "Get out," I snapped. "Right now, and don't come near me or my baby again." She hesitated, then hurried out the door, leaving us alone. Mark's shoulders slumped, and he looked like an abandoned puppy. That moment I realized how deeply I'd been fooled. 2 days before my wedding, I was pregnant, vulnerable, and blind to all the signs. I'd trusted him blindly. His next words were a weak apology, but I didn't want words. I wanted answers, and most of all, I wanted to understand how he could do this to me. How he could betray me so openly, right under my nose when I was carrying his child. I didn't cry that day. Honestly, I felt numb. My chest was tight, my palms sweaty. I kept thinking, how many other lies had I believed? How many more betrayals were hiding behind his charming smile? That night I sat alone in my apartment, clutching my belly, trying to breathe through the storm inside. The trust I had placed in Mark was shattered. The love I thought was real was a lie. I kept replaying that scene, the smell of her perfume lingering in my nose, the sickening sight of her hurried exit. I knew I had to do something, something that would make him regret what he'd done, something that would show him I was no fool. But what? I wasn't exactly the vengeful type. I'd always believed in honesty, in facing problems head-on. But this was different. This was a betrayal so deep that I felt like a stranger in my own life. I needed a plan, one that would make him hurt but without crossing a line. I wanted him to know I'd found out, I'd seen everything, and I wasn't going to be the fool anymore. As I sat there, the cold air from the window chilled my skin, and I thought about the pieces I'd need. Evidence first, proof that he'd been hiding this from me. Then I'd have to decide how to confront him, what to say that would cut deepest. I didn't care about tears or apologies anymore. Only revenge. I stood up, my body feeling heavy but my mind sharper than ever. I knew this wasn't over. If I was going to walk away from all of this, I'd walk away with something that mattered, something that hurt him as much as he'd hurt me. The game was on now, and I was ready to play. The next morning, I couldn't shake off the image from the night before. Her lipstick stain on his collar, the way her hurried footsteps sounded as she disappeared into the hallway. I kept replaying that scene like a broken record, but what haunted me even more was the feeling in my gut. This wasn't just a one-time slip-up. No, this was years of deception, buried beneath his charm and our plans for the future. I needed proof that this wasn't an isolated incident, that he'd been lying to me for longer than I thought. I decided I had to get tangible evidence, something I could hold over his head, something that would make him understand I wasn't going to be played anymore. I started by going through his things. It wasn't exactly legal or moral, I'll admit that, but I was desperate. I found his phone charger on the nightstand and grabbed it when he wasn't looking. I knew he kept his phone in his pocket most of the time, but I also knew he'd use it at some point. I waited until he came home from work, and then used my spare key to get into his bedroom while he was in the shower. The room was a mess, a typical bachelor's space, but beneath the clutter I found what I was looking for. His phone, sitting on the side table. I unlocked it using a pattern I'd seen him draw 1,000 times. I knew I shouldn't have, but I needed to see the messages. Just one glance would tell me if this was a one-time mistake or something more. What I saw made my stomach clench. Old messages, flirtatious texts, pictures exchanged when I wasn't around. Nothing explicit yet, but enough to show this wasn't a new thing. And then a message from 2 nights ago, just hours before I caught her leaving his house. "Can't wait to see you tonight. You make me forget everything." My fingers trembled as I read it, a cold wave rushing over me. I snapped a few screenshots, enough to prove he'd been lying to my face all this time. I knew I'd use them later. I also found a receipt in his wallet, dinner for two, from a restaurant I didn't recognize, paid with a card I'd never seen. That was another piece of the puzzle. He'd been sneaking around, lying about where he'd been. I had the evidence now. That night I sat on the couch, clutching his phone, the evidence burning in my hand. My heart hammered in my chest. I wasn't sure whether I felt more anger or heartbreak, but I knew I had to confront him, and I had to do it carefully. I didn't want to blow up everything in the heat of the moment. I needed a plan. I needed him to see that I knew, that I had proof, and that I wasn't going to take this lying down. The next day I called him at work. "Can we talk?" I asked, voice cold but controlled. "I think we need to have a serious conversation about us." He hesitated. "Sure, what's wrong?" "Oh, I think you already know," I said. "Meet me at home in an hour, and don't bother lying, Mark. I've seen enough." When he arrived, I was waiting. The evidence was laid out on the table, screenshots, receipts, everything. His face drained of color as I pushed the phone toward him. "So, this is why you've been so distant lately," I said, my voice a mixture of fury and heartbreak. "You've been lying to my face, cheating on me and sneaking around with her. How long has this been going on?" He looked down, guilty, but then tried to brush it off. "Look, I didn't mean for it to go this far. It just happened. I was confused and I didn't know how to tell you." Confused, I cut him off. "You're a grown man. You think sneaking behind my back, especially when I'm pregnant, is confused? That's bullshit, Mark. I trusted you. I loved you." He looked like he wanted to say something, but I was already boiling. I told him I was done with his lies, done with being played for a fool. And that's when the idea for my revenge started to take shape. I wasn't just going to walk away quietly. No, I was going to make him regret everything. I told him I'd be staying at my sister for a while, giving myself space to think. But secretly, I was planning my move. I knew I wouldn't let him get away with this. My mind raced through options. What could I do that would hit him where it hurt without crossing some line? I wanted him to feel the loss, the betrayal, the utter failure of his lies. By the time I left, he was still standing there, speechless. I felt my stomach twist with satisfaction and a cold thrill of determination. I'd been betrayed badly, yes, but I wasn't going to be a victim. I would take control, make him see that his actions had consequences, and I'd do it in a way he'd never see coming. I closed the door behind me with a final glance at the house I once thought of as my future. The betrayal burned in my chest, but also lit a fire. This wasn't just about him cheating. It was about reclaiming my dignity. He thought he could ruin me, but I'd prove him wrong. And I'd start by planning the kind of revenge that would remind him exactly who he'd messed with. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, the way she looked at him like he was her entire world. I felt a sick kind of rage bubbling inside me, hot and relentless. I'd spent years building a life with him, dreaming about our future, and now I was left with nothing but shattered trust and a deep, gnawing pain. But beneath that, a small voice kept whispering, I needed to make him pay. I started sketching out my plan that night with my hand trembling but my mind sharp. Revenge, I decided, had to be clever. It had to hit him where it hurt, emotionally, not physically. I wanted him to feel the betrayal the way I did, but amplified. I wanted him to understand that I'd seen everything, that I knew the truth, and that I wasn't afraid to make him regret the day he ever crossed me. First, I needed to isolate him from his usual routines. I knew his schedule, when he left for work, when he came back, where he often went after hours. I'd already gathered enough evidence for that, so I took it a step further. I contacted his favorite bar, the one he'd go to after work sometimes, and I arranged for a surprise visit, a little gift from me, disguised as a friendly gesture but really a way to make sure he was caught off guard. Then I bought a small but meaningful gift, a luxury watch he'd admired but would never buy himself, an expensive gesture but one that would sting even more if he saw it and connected the dots. I left it in his car with a note that simply read, "For the man I thought I knew." No signature, just enough to make him question himself, his choices. In the days that followed, I kept my distance while subtly throwing clues his way. I changed my routines, kept my phone close, and let him see that I was alive and well, that I was moving on. I wanted him to be desperate to find out what I was up to realize that I wasn't fatting away quietly. I wasn't going to let him think I'd accept being betrayed and discarded. And then I made the final move. I booked a photographer for a business lunch I had no intention of attending. Instead, I dressed sharply, added a little extra makeup for good measure, and waited for him to show up, just a few blocks from his usual hangout. I knew he'd be curious enough to follow, to see what I was up to, and he did. When I saw him get into his car, I followed at a distance, enough to stay hidden but close enough to see everything. I wanted him to realize I was watching. I wanted him to feel the weight of what was coming. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, heart pounding, and watched the footage I'd secretly captured. It was perfect. There he was, meeting a woman in a dimly lit parking lot. Definitely her. I recognized her from the night I caught her leaving his house. They exchanged quick kisses, then he handed her a small velvet box. A necklace, I guessed. My stomach clenched. He was cheating on me, and now I had proof that he was actively hiding it. My fingers curled into fists as I stared at the screen. This wasn't just about the affair anymore. It was about revenge. I wanted him to feel the loss, the betrayal, the humiliation. I wanted him to understand that he'd lost the person he'd betrayed for his own selfishness. I knew I'd have to confront him soon, but not just yet. I wanted him to wonder what I knew, to wait in fear. I kept the footage on my phone, ready to use it at the right moment. I wasn't going to let him brush this off as some mistake or a one-time slip-up. No, this was the beginning of his downfall. The next day I called my sister. "I'm going to make him regret everything," I told her. "He'll wish he'd never crossed me." Her voice was supportive but cautious. "Are you sure you want to go this far?" "Sure as hell do," I said, feeling the cold fire inside me. "He's going to regret the day he ever thought he could betray me. I'm not just leaving, I'm leaving him a message he'll never forget." I can't say I felt victorious yet, but I felt alive again, focused, determined. I'd spent so long trusting blindly, believing in the man I loved. Now I was going to make damn sure he understood what betrayal costs. Soon, I'd be ready for the final move. I could taste the anticipation, the rush of knowing I was about to turn everything upside down. And when I was done, there was one thing I knew for sure. I'd reclaim my dignity, one way or another. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about standing tall after everything I'd lost. The day I finally decided to confront him, my stomach felt like it was made of lead. Every nerve in my body was on high alert, but my face was calm, calmer than I felt inside. I'd spent days preparing, orchestrating every detail so that he wouldn't see me coming. I wanted him to know I'd uncovered everything, that I knew the truth no matter what he said. I was done playing the naive wife. Now I was about to be the one in control. I told him I wanted to meet him at the park near his house. It was a public place but quiet enough for what I had planned. When he arrived, I was already there, sitting on a bench, my bag beside me, pretending to wait for a friend. He looked surprised to see me, but I could tell he was nervous. His eyes darted around, trying to gauge what I might say. "Hey," I greeted him, forcing a friendly tone. "Thanks for coming." He hesitated, then sat down beside me. "What's this about?" I pulled out my phone, holding it so he could see the screen. I think you know exactly what this is, I said. Your little secret rendezvous, the gift I left in your car, the photos I took last night. His face paled. You've been spying on me. Spying? No, just watching, just gathering proof. I looked him straight in the eyes. You thought you could keep cheating on me, lie to my face, and I wouldn't find out. He looked guilty, but his voice was defensive. You don't understand. It's complicated. I didn't mean for things to go this far. Oh, I think I understand perfectly. I took a deep breath, feeling the cold resolve settle in. You've been messing around behind my back for months. While I was pregnant, while I was vulnerable, you were with her. And you really think I'd just sweep this under the rug? His jaw clenched. Look, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I love you. Do you? I shot back, voice rising. Because the way I see it, love isn't sneaking behind someone's back, hiding messages, exchanging gifts with another woman while I'm inside, carrying your child. He looked down, silent. I was shaking with rage but kept my voice steady. You thought I'd never find out, that I'd stay loyal while you were out betraying me. Well, I've got news for you. I'm done. I paused, letting the words hang between us. You're a liar, Mark, and I don't want to see you again. He reached out, trying to touch my hand, but I moved away. Please, he begged. Can't we talk about this? No, my voice was cold. You had your chance and you blew it. I hope she was worth it, because I'm done with both of you. I turned to walk away, but then I remembered the photos, the evidence I had. I pulled out my phone and handed it to him. Here's everything, proof I've been watching, and I want you to think about that the next time you look in the mirror, because I know what you did, and I'm not coming back, not ever. He stared at the screen, eyes wide with shock, then finally looked up at me with a mix of anger and despair. You're crazy, he spat. Maybe, I said, voice venomous but controlled. Or maybe I'm just done being your fool. The choice is yours. I left him sitting there in the park, staring at the evidence like it was already tearing his world apart. My hand trembled as I reached for my bag and turned away. The rush of adrenaline was almost too much to handle, my heart pounding, my skin prickling with the aftermath of everything I'd just done. That night, I went home and packed a bag. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I just needed to get away from that house, from that betrayal. I knew I'd taken the first step toward reclaiming myself, but the real game was just beginning. As I locked the door behind me and headed out into the night, I felt a strange mix of relief and anticipation. I'd done everything I could to expose him, to make him feel the loss. Now, I'd wait and see how he reacted, what he'd do when the truth finally sank in. And I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let him walk all over me again. Not after everything. Not after the pain he'd caused me. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about finally taking control of my life and making damn sure he'd regret ever crossing me. The days that followed were a blur of nerve-wracking anticipation. I stayed at my sister's house, trying to keep a normal face, but inside I felt like a storm was brewing. Every minute that passed, I replayed the confrontation, wondering how he'd react. Would he break down, beg, or would he double down and try to spin it all into some twisted justification? I didn't care. I'd already made my decision. I'd show him I wasn't the fool he thought I was. On the third day, I finally got the call I'd been waiting for. It was him. His voice trembled on the line, and I could tell he'd been drinking because his words slurred just a little. Look, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to get this bad, he said, voice cracking. Can we meet up just to talk? I took a deep breath. This was the moment I'd planned for. I needed to be cold, calculated. Fine, I said. But only if you understand this isn't going to change anything. I have all the proof. I know what you did, and I'm done pretending. We arranged to meet at the same park. I wanted him to see me strong, unshaken, while he was desperate to salvage whatever was left of his ego. When he arrived, I already sat on the same bench, waiting silently. His face was red, eyes glassy, but he was trying to look composed. Look, I started, voice firm but steady. You lied to me for months. You cheated on me while I was pregnant, while I was vulnerable. I want to know why. He looked away, stumbling over his words. It was a mistake. I was confused. I didn't mean for it to go this far. No, I cut him off sharply. You meant every word, every kiss, every gift you gave her. I saw the proof, the photos, the messages. You planned this, didn't you? He looked down, silent. Then, in a quiet, defeated voice, he admitted, yeah, I was a coward. I didn't know how to tell you. I thought I could fix it, but I lost myself. I never wanted to hurt you like this. That was the moment. I knew I had to escalate. The anger in my chest was about to explode. I reached into my bag and pulled out the small package I'd left in his car, a simple but powerful gesture. I handed it to him, keeping my eyes cold. "This," I said, "is your last gift from me. I want you to have it, and I want you to remember how you threw away everything good we had. You thought you could cheat, lie, and get away with it. But I'm not a pushover anymore. I'm done being your fool." He looked at the box, then back at me, confused. "What is this?" "Open it," I said, voice dripping with disdain, "and then think about what you've lost." He hesitated, then slowly opened the box. Inside was the luxury watch I'd bought him, something I knew he'd wanted but never bought himself. The look on his face was priceless, shock, guilt, and a hint of remorse. But it was too late for apologies. "You're a real piece of work," I told him. "You betrayed me, and I'll never forgive you for that. I've got enough proof to ruin you if I wanted to, but I'm not interested in destroying you. I just want you to understand that you lost the best thing you ever had, even if you're too blind to see it now." He looked like he was about to say something, but the words caught in his throat. Instead, he just stared at the watch, then looked up at me with wide, remorseful eyes. I knew I'd made my point. "I'm leaving," I said, standing up. "And don't bother trying to contact me. I have everything I need. Just remember this. You had a good thing and you threw it away for some fleeting thrill. I hope it was worth it." Without another word, I turned and walked away. My heart was pounding, but I felt lighter, like I'd finally taken control of the wreckage. The betrayal still burned, but I'd turned it into my strength. I wasn't going to let this define me, but I was going to make sure he never forgot what he lost. As I got into my sister's car, I finally let the tears come. Relief, anger, sadness, all mixed into one. I'd done what needed to be done. I'd fought back and I'd won a small but vital victory. That day, I learned something crucial. No matter how much you love someone, if they betray you, the only way to heal is often through making sure they understand the depth of your pain, and that you're not going to be a fool anymore. This was my line in the sand, and I was done crossing it for anyone who didn't value me. The days after I handed him the watch and walked away, I felt a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. I'd done everything I could, exposed the betrayal, made him see what he'd lost, and finally reclaimed some shred of my dignity. But inside, there was still this lingering ache, a quiet voice reminding me how deeply I'd been hurt and how little trust I had left in the people I once loved. Still, I knew I couldn't go back. Not anymore. For a while, I kept my distance from everyone, friends, family, even the people I used to trust. It was like building walls around myself, afraid that if I let anyone get close, I'd just get hurt again. I stayed focused on healing, on preparing for the life I wanted to give my child. I didn't need anyone's approval anymore, just my own strength. One afternoon, I sat on my front porch watching my baby kick inside me, feeling the tiny helplessness that had once made me so vulnerable. Now that same feeling fueled my resolve. I thought about everything I'd been through, the betrayal, the deception, the heartbreak, and I realized I'd survived it all. More than that, I'd taken control. I picked up my phone and sent a simple message to my estranged husband. "I'm done. The house is in my name now. I'll be filing the papers tomorrow. You won't hear from me again." That was it. Clear, concrete, no drama, no anger, just the truth. I needed to end that chapter of my life for good. As the days turned into weeks, I focused on my pregnancy, on building a life I could be proud of. I found strength in small moments, feeling my baby move, watching sunsets, joking with my sister. I started trusting myself again, slowly but surely. It wasn't easy, but I knew I was better off without someone who would betray me so brutally. And I learned something crucial from all of this. Betrayal doesn't define you. The way you respond does. I could have let the pain swallow me whole. Instead, I used it as fuel to rebuild, to become stronger. That's what I want anyone listening to know. No matter how deep the betrayal, you can choose your next step. You don't have to be a victim. You can take control, even if it feels like your world is falling apart. Looking back, I realize the most important lesson is this: trust is fragile, and once broken, it's almost impossible to mend. But your dignity, your strength, that's yours to reclaim. And that's what I did. I took back my life, my peace, and my sense of worth piece by piece. Today, I stand here not as a victim, but as someone who survived betrayal and came out the other side. I can finally look in the mirror and say I am enough, more than enough. I don't need his apologies or his empty promises. I only need to raise my child in a world where trust is earned, not given blindly. So to anyone out there feeling broken or betrayed, know this. You are not alone. It hurts, it cuts deep, but you are stronger than you think. You have the power to walk away, rebuild, and come out better than before. Sometimes, the only way forward is to let go of what's destroying you, even if it's hard. Because your life is worth so much more than betrayal, lies, and broken trust. And I'm finally living proof of that.